15 Most Terrifying Unsolved Mysteries Ever Recorded. Part 1.
If you are brand new to our channel, we invite you to take a moment to subscribe. Just click on the lit red button as well as the gray bell. Why the bell? Well, it will let you know every time we post a new video.
1. The Dyatlov Pass Incident. Prepare to be chilled to the bone. The Dyatlov Pass incident is something that is scarier than any Stephen King novel. 9 very experienced hikers died very mysterious and gruesome deaths. The 9 hikers were students and grad students from Russia. They were going on a skiing expedition. Weather conditions were not the greatest, but these guys were experienced, so they pressed onward. They had reached the top of a mountain area called Oakland and they made camp for the night. Sometime during the night something terrifying happened. When the hikers failed to return, a search party was formed. The search and rescue team came across a grotesque scene. They found the campsite. The tent was cut open from the inside. The bodies were strewn about in the snow. Some were naked. Some were partially dressed. They had gone out of their tent in terror, with bare feet in the snow, freezing temperatures. Most of the dead died of hypothermia. However, they had internal injuries that had to have been caused by extreme force or pressure. No animal or human could inflict these kind of injuries. One victim was missing her tongue and eyeballs. 2. The SS Ourang Medan disaster. In June of 1947, 2 American ships happened to come across a coded SOS message. SOS from the Ourang Medan, we float. All officers including captain dead in chart room, and on the bridge. Probably whole crew of dead, I die. The Ourang Medan was located and boarded. The scene was terrifying. The ship's top deck was cluttered with dead bodies. The bodies were all on their backs with their mouths and eyes wide open. Their faces contorted and frozen in agony. Even a dog was found in the same position. Suddenly a fire broke out aboard the ship, and everyone had to evacuate before further investigation. The ship sunk. What caused the deaths of everyone aboard the ship? The popular theories included was an elaborate hoax, or everyone died due to the leaking of a toxic chemical they were carrying in their cargo holds. 3. The Cache Landrum UFO Incident. Betty Cache, her friend Vicky Landrum, and Vicky's grandson, Colby, were driving near Houston Intercontinental Airport when they came across a massive ball of light. It shifted into the shape of a diamond. Magnificent lights were all around it, and fire would burst from the bottom as it looked like it was trying to gain altitude. Helicopters were nearby, and looked to be military aircraft. The UFO flew upwards, and was surrounded by the helicopters. Betty continued driving, and saw it disappear into the sky. After dropping the Landrums off and returning to her own house, she noticed she was suddenly not feeling well. The next day she felt terrible. She was suffering a great deal of nausea and diarrhea. Her body felt sunburned, and boils developed all over her body. Vicky and Colby were also suffering from what they felt was a sunburn across their bodies. They didn't get nearly as sick as Betty. Betty ended up in the hospital for weeks as she recovered from what doctors thought was some sort of chemical or radioactive exposure. The government insists there were no helicopters belonging to them in the vicinity of Houston despite having several eyewitnesses, including a police officer and his wife. Was the USAF helping a UFO that was in trouble? Were the witnesses trying to get their 15 minutes of fame? But then, what about the burns and illness? 4. Allagash Abductions. In August of 1976, 4 men believed they were abducted by aliens while out on a camping trip. They were camping in Allagash, Maine, when they were taken from their canoe and beamed into a UFO. The men were Jim and Jack Weiner, Charles Wrack and Charles Foltz. All 4 men underwent hypnotic regression and retold their story. The stories all matched up. All 4 even passed lie detector tests. The men were abducted from their canoes, brought into the UFOs, where they were poked and prodded by aliens. The aliens had oversized heads with almond-shaped eyes. They had 4 fingers on each hand. After their examinations they were beamed back down again, and had most of their memories from that night erased. However, all suffered similar nightmares, which is why they decided to undergo hypnosis in the first place. These men headed out for a fun guys camping trip, and little did they know it would change the course of their entire lives. 5. Anneliese Michel. Anneliese was a young religious girl who went to Mass twice a week. Her classmates described her as being antisocial and very spiritual. Anneliese started having seizures during her teenage years. It was then that her personality and character changed completely. She began to become physically ill and lash out around religious objects. She became violent, would drink her own urine, and ate bugs. Her parents begged their Catholic priest for an exorcism as they were convinced she was suffering from demonic possession. With much reluctance, the priest gained consent from the bishop to perform an exorcism on Anneliese. The exorcism lasted many months. It resulted in her death. Blame was placed on her parents in the Catholic Church. Anneliese was found to be malnourished and dehydrated at the time of her death. Many doctors came out and said that she was not possessed, she was mentally ill. The film The Exorcism of Emily Rose is based on Anneliese's horrific story. 6. Odon Fire Poltergeist. The bizarre events took place in April of 1941. A gentleman by the name of William Hackler was outside his farmhouse when he noticed a fire near an upstairs windowsill. He rushed to put it out, and the volunteer fire department showed up as well. The fire was quickly extinguished. That was just the beginning. Soon another fire broke out and the fire department was called again to come put it out. Just as that one was being put out, another one popped up. A book tumbled off a shelf and began burning from the inside out. A mattress began burning. Small fires began popping up all around the house for the entire day. These fires would burn through objects, but not spread throughout the house. The fire department stayed the entire day at the Hackler farmhouse. They put out at least 28 fires total. The small town of Odon was spooked. There was no logical explanation. Mr. Hackler was so scared he demolished the house and built a brand new one. The poltergeist must have left with the old house as he never had any more fire troubles. 7. Mackenzie Poltergeist. The Mackenzie Poltergeist is located in Greyfriars Kirk. A mausoleum known as the Black Mausoleum holds the remains of bloody King advocate George Mackenzie. He was responsible for thousands upon thousands of deaths. He tortured and killed people for fun. He created one of the first concentration camps, where the prisoners died of disease and starvation. The Black Mausoleum is open for guided tours. Those that take the tour often report feeling cold and nauseous. In certain cases, tour guests leave with fingerprints or bruises all over their body. At one point the mausoleum was closed for tours due to the strange and terrifying incidents. Would you dare tour the Black Mausoleum of Death? 8. Hornsey Coal Poltergeist. In January 1921, in a small suburban town, the Frost family began being terrorized by some demonic force. Mr. Frost had just brought a load of coal in to heat up the house, when all of a sudden the coal began dancing and firing around the house. It broke windows and picture frames. It was like a war zone. Initially, the Frost family thought some sort of explosive or flammable material was mixed in with the coal, but after bringing all the coal outside, some of the coal came back inside and began trickling down the stairs. Flickering flames started moving up and down the stairwell. It soon stopped, and things seemed okay for a little while, but then the mysterious force came back with a vengeance. Furniture began moving, knives began being thrown through the walls, and then their 5-year-old mysteriously died. That was enough for them. The Frosts moved out of their haunted house. Little did the Frost family know their house was built on the grounds of an old cemetery. Now supposedly all the graves were dug up and relocated, but there could have easily been a grave miss during their relocation.